activities or reading. Kids 3 and over who complete the program by July 24th can enjoy breakfast with Laura Numeroff, author of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie.
I am
Louie Free, and that's Greg Palast on the Louie Free Morning Show.
Independent radio that used to be so prevalent in America is fast becoming a thing of the past.
Well, if it wasn't for independent radio, Louie, you were one of the very first people to ever take note of what I was doing in Britain and bringing my voice across.
I'm flattered. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate that.
And I recognize that. That's very important. I mean, I hope the people listening on your show realize what a precious resource this is. Our right beat is under attack. The roots of real information are being shut down. And boy, I hope that your listeners, I don't know who your sponsors are, but buy all their stuff.
Buy all their stuff. All right, great. That's an old one. I have a wonderful young man sitting across from me, Dr. Mike Sevilla. Welcome back.
Yes, sir. Great to be back.
Great
can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Sound great. How are you? You look great.
It's great. It's summertime in Youngstown, and maybe a little cooler today. I was driving up, and you see the school buses, and I always think about those days when it's the last day of school, and and all the stories about thinking growing up here in Youngstown, and it's great memories. It's just great memories.
Yeah, last day of school and being out in the summer seemed so long, and you get older.
Exactly.
Right?
Like you didn't think about anything else, and you're just looking forward to the summer, looking forward to spending time with your friends and all that kind of stuff, and just a lot of great memories driving up here today.
That's beautiful to hear. I wonder, do young people today, and I don't want to be that curmudgeon, I don't want to be that old guy.
You can't.
Kids these days,
it's okay.
Yeah, thank you. But I've got to wonder if they look forward to playing video games also.
They do now. It's just like, when you get to summertime, when you were growing up, it was like it's stuff that you couldn't do the rest of the year, especially around here, because you could be outside,
play
and all that stuff. Get on your bike, or when you're younger, you get to
go down by a creek, go into the wood. Yeah.
It's just like what these kids do now in the summertime. It's just I don't
know. Again, although you are decades and decades and decades and decades younger than I am, but you're still. I get concerned about that. It's good. Your physician. It's good to be outside.
Yeah,
we non-physicians know it's good to be out and run around.
You're an adult, you're a kid, and people always ask me about things like your vitamin D level and this part of the country and doing that. But just think about kids growing up. Just get outside, and unfortunately, just with all the stuff, I don't want to get all downer in the news and stuff. But it's just there's a lot of parents and kids. Sometimes they're a little afraid or scared to get outside now in the summertime, just with everything going on. But this is the time to get outside and enjoy nature and enjoy your friends and not be inside to play video games and all that kind of stuff. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy what's going on out there.
Do we get too fearful about things? Because when I've talked about kids needing to be outside, people needing to be outside,
exactly.
Again, there are all the things about how good it feels to be with the trees, and I can never remember tree bathing. The Japanese art of tree bathing, they talk about, there's something about, they actually have a name for it, being out in nature, basically.
Right, exactly.
And the importance of it and the beauty of it and going through the park. And now everybody says, yeah, but the ticks. And you can always find a reason to be fearful.
We
right?
complain about everything. Last month was all about the rain and all about the pollen. And, now it's supposed to be 80 degrees later this week. And people are going to be complaining about the heat and stuff. And, people, just enjoy life, enjoy the weather and things. That down in Salem, beginning in Salem today, we have our little Salem car cruise down there, and that's going to be fun. It's going to bring a lot of people together in the community and bring some money into the community, into Salem, and just hopefully the weather will hold up for that. But it's good just to get outside and socialize and see your friends and see your neighbors.
And I'm going to say again, I know that if there's an event, it's tough if it's raining. But Jennifer Jones and I were talking earlier this morning. I love being out in the rain. I've said this many times, I love to walk in the rain. I love to walk barefoot. Again, not in fairness, again, I say this with people. I had water in the basement. But some people got really flooded. So obviously, I'm not talking about the torrential downpours, how much I enjoy. I don't. because a lot of people suffer and are suffering terribly because of that. But the reality is, again, and once my neighbors where I'm at now and the police department got a little acclimated that if it's 3 or 4 in the morning and Louie's walking barefoot around, it's really okay. I'm just the neighborhood wacky guy. But it feels good to be out in it, and people get too fearful.
But unfortunately, and there's a whole debate about the media hyping up things and shootings and that type of thing, But I still believe that people are good people out there, and people look after each other, look after their kids, or when people get older, look after the older people out there, especially when it gets really cold in the wintertime and it gets hot and humid in the summertime. We're losing some of that now, which is kind of sad.
You're right. I have some. Well, they've been there for a couple of years now, but very, very young neighbors, and it's cute how they check up on us. Yeah. It's cute. It's funny to have the recognition that you're the old people in the neighborhood now. My wife, we're walking or whatever. But
you probably did that when you were younger. I mean, if you knew that they were.
Oh, we check on that. Oh, yeah, but it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. But it's cute because they don't say it, but. It's like, we know you people are old over there, and we just want to make sure it's a beautiful thing. And that's what we need more of, people that don't know their neighbors. And what makes that about you? What is it about Dr. Mike Sevilla? Because you always are so generous of heart. You're just, you're obviously an extremely bright guy. I don't want to say but, because that almost, you're extremely, and very generous of heart. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of it is my upbringing. Starting with my parents. They're immigrants from the Philippines. They came here in the late 1960s, trying to find a new life. And but back in that time in the 60s and the 70s, there was a huge Filipino community here in the Youngstown area, and that's how my parents met. People may know my dad was a physician, ear, nose, and throat specialist for 30 years, practiced out of Northside Hospital, which is no longer there anymore, which is a whole separate sad conversation. But he was known in the community, and I think that's where I got a lot of kind of my values, but also growing up here in the Youngstown area. I mean, I grew up in Austintown and Canfield and Boardman, and I got to experience a lot of people, met a lot of people growing up in the school system, all that, and. I think that's where our journey is today. We're each of us are a piece of the person that we have met, growing up in the past.
And by choice, though. I mean, you choose to be. I'm not saying that you have to think I need to be a nice guy. Yeah. I don't mean it like that. But you absorb and emulate the people that you admired, which were because some guys. Feel that with tough guys, they've got to be tough. They got a heart. It's a hard ass. Oh, that guy was tough. I'm going to be tough too. Yeah. You're different than that.
Well, thank you.
Because of a choice. I mean, you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the positive influence of my parents, the influence of just growing up in this community here. It's just. A lot of people, still kind of, I don't know why, but, just they don't look favorably on, the Youngstown community for some reason, but there's and what you've done here, Louie, here is just when you talk to people, it's just, you're kind of bringing together a lot of the great people, and
you're one of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I meet a lot of them too, and we all influence each other, and, with our kids that are growing up in the community now, that's what we have to share with them, I think.
One of the things, Dr. Mike Sevilla, when you say that about the community, Jennifer Jones was in earlier from, I call her Youngstown's Green Goddess, from Green Youngstown.
Oh, yeah.
And she was telling me, actually, I think she left her notes here, but she mentioned that we were talking about I'm glad she left these, the tire, they just had a tire recycling drive and an electronics recycling drive with TVs where people had to pay because of the expense of recycling came down in droves with TVs, flat screen TVs, and paid to have them recycled. Had to pay $1 an inch. Valeric, fortunately, picked up the other half of that, and she talked about the increase and how much more there is, and in TVs and electronics. TVs were up 35.8%, 23.1% on the regular electronics, 30% on tire recycling. I mean, and I always hear from people that I either know that watch or listen from outside the area, or just people that kind of find the show. They're surprised to hear in this area that we've got green youngs. You know, the expectation is always the negative news, the poverty level, the crime level in the city. Not thinking about how many good people are that took their time to bring their tires down, to bring their TVs down, and actually have to pay to have them properly, ethically, responsibly recycled.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing about the community.
Oh yeah. And you know, you just keep meeting people every day. You know, we just keep meeting great people every day. People who, you know, who don't toot their own horn. You know, but you know that they're really great people. You just know people meet people that you meet other people, and you meet them at community gatherings or that sort. You know, and you just kind of learn what you have in common, and hopefully maybe you can come together and try to solve some problems that are out there.
For you, let's talk about medicine. One of the things I've got to say, you are so savvy with tech again, and I get by. You've always been at the forefront of tech, because I'm looking online and I'm seeing that you've got live now with Louie, and I'm thinking, listen to me seriously, and I should, as my wife always says, my greatest asset's my greatest liability. There's no filter between my brain and my mouth. And here comes, I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm like, well, wow, how is he doing that? Where does he have that camera? I see it on your phone. It's like, okay, you're sharing it. And I'm like, oh my God. When I had that recognition, where did he put that camera? How is that camera in the same place mine is? I don't see it.
Yeah. I mean, the power of technology now.
Talk about it with medicine.
It's just incredible with medicine now, and you know, and I've been, excuse me, but been talking about it for a long time, and you know, people can go see my Facebook page. You know, Salem Family Practice, Dr. Mike Sevilla, drmikesevilla.com. And you can see that, you know, that we need to kind of spread all this, you know, what I think is positive information, the accurate information. There's a lot of negative stuff that's out there. Excuse me. You know, many years ago, Louie, you know, when all this thing started with like Google and all that stuff, and you know, I always tell the story of you know, it always comes to me back to technology and vaccinations, you know, and vaccinations with children, you know, and talking about you know the bad information that was out there when it comes to you know, they thought that vaccines cause autism, and for many years, maybe 10, 15 years, you know, there's a lot of kids that were not vaccinated, and now we're kind of seeing the effects of that with this whole kind of measles outbreak nationally. Unfortunately, you know, for the state of Ohio, I don't believe there's been a case yet, but it's probably I mean, there's a case in the last month in Pittsburgh, and also closer to the Valley here in Western Pennsylvania. So it's getting closer here. So it's getting really scary.
I want to ask you, so, and again, understand, you know, you're the doctor, not me. But when I hear measles, when I hear some of the things, and I want to talk about just specifically some of the measles, chicken pox, when I was young, again, I'm 66 years old. That's you got those, and again, I can't say I don't remember anyone getting seriously ill because I was too young. But kids got them, they got better, and they went back to school.
Yeah.
Measles, you know, again, no fun to have. And I can't remember. There was one, and my parents obviously, not obviously, were both dead. So I either didn't have measles or chicken pox, one or the other. I never, for whatever reason, never had. Mm-hmm. And I think it was chicken pox. But moms, things like that, kids just got, it was part of growing up.
Right.
What's the, I hate to say, again, I hate saying what's the danger, because, again, no one wants their child to be sick. But
correct.
How is that?
Correct.
Is it?
It is
with measles specifically.
Yeah,
Doc.
well, no, even measles and chickenpox. Even when I was growing up,
which wasn't that long ago. Because
right?
you're
But
young.
people would have kind of these chickenpox parties or measles, where people would bring all their kids and they would get all infected at the same time, and they thought that was the right thing. Yeah, because when you do get the chickenpox, you do get immunity to it. So the thinking was not so long ago, that you get all these kids together, and then instead of being vaccinated or instead of getting shots, that you get better immune to it. And even unfortunately now, Louie, I mean, there's even kids and parents in different states and things. They're doing that now. They're like, oh well, that's safer than getting the dangerous vaccine, which is not the right thinking, because you don't know. There's still complications from getting chickenpox. It's not just you get a rash, and then it goes away.
You're better in a few days.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's a lot of bad things that can happen. It can affect your neurological system. It can affect this. It can affect that. So definitely the safest thing is to get immunized. I'm getting a lot of questions about measles these days. Like, Doc, I'm not sure if I got measles when I was growing up. I mean, these are people 50, 60, 70 years old. They're not sure. I'm not sure. My mom, I think, told me I did. But there are things like blood tests and things that you can talk to your doctor about to see if you have immunity to that. If you're not, you can get a booster. When I tell people, if you're not sure, talk to your doctor about it, because it's a little bit too late when those cases, I think, are going to start in Ohio sometime. And it's good to be prepared. It's good to see if you are immune to measles, because there's almost 1,000 cases nationally. I mean, we're 950 or something like that, and it's only a matter of time when I think it's going to be their first case in Ohio, and then everybody's going to be very concerned. There's going to be a panic, and there's a way to really there's a way to kind of prevent that, is to talk to your doctor. There are some tests and to see if you do have immunity, even if you're an adult.
Dr. Sevilla, can we shift and talk a little bit about antibiotics?
Sure.
Once again, disclaimer, you're the expert, you're the physician, not me.
Yeah.
One of the things that I get concerned about with antibiotics, and I know, and I think most of us have been, certainly when I was younger, guilty of this. You get a sore throat, or you start sniffling, and you want to take an antibiotic. And probably, again, correct me if I'm wrong, viral, but you're taking an antibiotic.
Yeah.
But you're better in, I don't know, a week or so, which you would be if you didn't take the antibiotic.
That's right.
But mentally you think, wow, I've got to always take that antibiotic as soon as I get a sore throat or sniffles or whatever, because that's what when I don't want to say nothing could be further from the truth, but it's just not accurate.
Right.
What are your thoughts on antibiotics?
Oh, I mean, I saw an article the other day, that there are some rivers or lakes in different parts of the world have a high concentration of antibiotics. And what is the complications of that? Is that, well, obviously there's viruses and bugs in those lakes and streams and things. They're going to be resistant to antibiotics, and the illnesses that come from them are typical antibiotics now are just not going to work. So it is, from a physician standpoint, it's easier just to give them the prescription for the antibiotic, because it saves time. You don't have to go through the whole explanation of why you don't need the antibiotic. And there's a lot of docs out there. They're very, they're very busy, and they don't have the time, or they don't want to do it, or it's at the end of the day, and to explain that. But I mean, we as physicians and in the medical community, we're trying to do a better way to educate ourselves as physicians, to say, hey, you don't need that antibiotic. You're going to be better in 2 days anyway. If you start to have these red flag symptoms, more fever or more pain or other type of things, then you call us or you come back, and then at that point you may need an antibiotic. But you're right, Louie. I mean, it's really out of control. We have to cut back the amount of antibiotics, the unnecessary antibiotics.
And again, please, I want to be clear. I'm not. Some physicians, but more again in the food industry, in the meat industry, they're rampant with
Correct.
that. And
that's a whole different conversation.
But again, it's still getting it's the environmental issue with that.
It's
And
when
I read the CDC report on antibiotic resistant and what they felt were urgent threats, and the report now is about 6 years old, I get concerned now learning about the gonorrhea, the antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea you can get it orally. My generation, again, if you didn't want to get what we used to call VD, now STDs, venereal disease, well, there's things you could do. And the worst or best case scenario, if you don't have intercourse, you're not worried. Now, kissing. I read an article about deep kissing, not deep kissing. You can actually get an oral gonorrhea that may or may not be, in that case, antibiotic resistant. Things like that, I don't want to say frighten me, but are really, really concern me. Something that you wouldn't think, or even through oral sex. I don't know.
Sure.
I did an adult disclaimer, I'm sure, earlier this morning. So even through oral, you would think, most people would think that is relatively safe. If somebody performs oral sex on you, or you perform oral sex, you're not going to transmit STDs.
Sure,
that's not the case, though.
Right, yeah. And now, I mean, it's not just so much bacteria like gonorrhea. It's more, you may have heard of a virus called human papillomavirus, or HPV. Yeah. And we're seeing more of these now in males, in male children. And we do know that HPV can cause cancer, whether you're a male or a female. And we're seeing a lot more, and it kind of makes sense, but people haven't probably thought about it before, head and neck cancers, like above the neck area, because of just like kissing and things. So the good thing about that is, coming back to immunizations, there is, this HPV vaccine that we are promoting, in children. But there has been some backlash to that. People say, it's you're promoting sex, or you're promoting, this type of behavior, and that's why I don't want my child to have, that HPV vaccine. And so it's just more and more education when it comes to vaccinations. I tell parents, HPV vaccine. I mean, that prevents cancer. Don't you want to give a vaccine? Don't you want to give something to your kid that's going to prevent cancer? And that's what this HPV vaccine is all about. So I guess getting back to your point about antibiotics, it's not only about antibiotics, but it's just not only about antibiotics in the doctor's office, but like you were saying, antibiotics in the poultry industry or in that type of industry for a different type of purpose. And it all ends up in the same thing: antibiotic resistant organisms.
Which again scare me. That combined,
it should scare everybody.
Combined with, and again, if people weren't concerned enough, last week I had Rosemary Gibson back on. Towards the end of last year, her book was published, China RX, about drugs coming in, prescription drugs coming in from China. She talked about some supplements. She's talked about like vitamin C. She's talked about over-the-counter acetaminophen, et cetera. But that the majority of I don't want to call them low-level, more common antibiotics like penicillin made in China. If we get into an issue, again, what happens if we can't even access some of the basic, what should I call them, more common, I guess, antibiotics like...
Right, even just like penicillin or something like that,
Which is still very commonly...
It's still good, it's still effective, but we're seeing the resistance, Louie, is those really, really sick patients in the hospital. So really, really sick patients in the intensive care unit, they're very, very sick because the usual typical antibiotics aren't working, and we need to use those higher, more powerful antibiotics. And yes, they do help, but they also have a lot of side effects too, which a lot of my patients talk to me about. So yeah, I mean, amoxicillin, penicillin still works if it's used in the right way, of course, in humans. But use of in animals and things is a whole separate conversation. But it is being used for those purposes, and there is obviously a debate on if that is appropriate, how they should be used as well in that industry.
And if I wasn't concerned enough, and I've got the article is in this studio somewhere,
Yes.
about some growers in Florida spraying antibiotics on crops that it kills a certain type of insect or something. It's just, I mean, I think we're playing with. I mean, playing with fire would be understating it with all of the antibiotics in the food industry, and now spraying it.
Yeah.
We want antibiotics to work. I expect that if I'm ill and I go to the hospital or go to the doctor or whatever, and I get penicillin,
Right.
that it's going to work. My assumption is going to work.
Oh, yeah.
If we keep doing things like this, it's going to create.
Yeah, we do know that there are less and less antibiotics being developed because it's getting more and more difficult to do that. So there's less. I mean, I can probably count on my hand in the last few years how many new antibiotics come out, and that opens up a whole different discussion about the cost of all these medications and prescription drugs. And when you get a new antibiotic out, or when you get a new medicine out for something, it's
astronomical.
It's so darn expensive. And I talk to my patients all the time about the cost of pharmaceuticals, the cost of drugs, and it's just a sad situation, about, I know, I have a medicine in my head that I know is going to work, but I know when I, write that prescription, I know sometimes, especially the older people in my practice, sometimes they're like, hey doc, I can't even afford that. It's like, we have to find some other way for them to do it, whether it's a patient assistance program, something to try to help them to get the medicine that they need.
When you say this, Dr. Sevilla, it makes me think of last week I again had Alexis Fleming on, who has in Scotland the Maggie Fleming Animal Hospice. She's just such a beautiful woman. She's got Crohn's. She had an emergency, a life-saving surgery, and talked about the NHS, how grateful she is for their National Health Service, and talked about how she'd never be able to afford it. This one hospital, with the dignity of every room as a private room, she left there. Who knows what the bill would have been with nothing. She said, and I had my the drugs to go. I mean, everything was provided for her, ambulance too, and no bill. The flip side of that is, when I go to The Guardian and I read, they have a section called Blood, Sweat, and Tears, where physicians, nurses, etc., write generally anonymous things. Beautiful about having a patient die, about just, I try to read them on air sometimes. I get so emotional because of the power of the writing.
Yeah.
We don't think about things like that. And then, but they write about a lot of the problems with the NHS too, about young doctors' suicides. I know we have issues with that in the United States, but with the pressure. But somewhere in between, and Alexis was talking about how the NHS, for her, is the greatest thing that humans can do, just to help each other. You need something. We were talking about before. My neighbor needs something I give, and when I need something, my neighbor, I do something for them. They do. I mean, and she talked about that relative to the NHS, that everybody has access.
Oh yeah.
But again, there's problems with that.
Sure.
Canada, we talk about the Canadian system. Well, there's problems with that. That's why people come to the United States. They can afford to get in for surgeries. Something's got to be done with the prescription prices.
Exactly.
I just don't know.
I don't know what it is.
What do you do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunately, I hate to say that we have to, go running to the government for all this kind of stuff. When I'm not that type of a person on general things, but I mean, it's such a huge, enormous problem. It's going to take, some kind of big solution, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. So,
I mean,
hey, you want to
go ahead.
You want to say hi to my mom and dad? They're watching us on Facebook right now.
Get out of here! Your mom and dad.
I know they're on Facebook, Louie. Yeah, I told them.
But your mom and dad are probably. How old are you?
I can't. Well, I'll tell you later.
Okay,
I'll tell you later.
But your mom and dad are probably
older.
You're young. Much? 66? Up. Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
Okay. Well,
but yeah, hey, I love you,
Facebook.
Mom and Dad. So yeah.
Well,
but yeah, thanks for watching. Yeah, because the only reason they would know. Well, yeah, because of technology, like you said, Facebook. Yeah, but I know that you probably would want to say something.
I want to say something to your mom and dad, and I mean this with, of course, I'm sincere, but 100% sincerity, gratitude. They put them, you get older and you get so grateful when you meet wonderful humans in our world. I mean, just good-hearted, wonderful, kind, bright, and that doesn't, yes, there's always that exception where some child didn't have any parenting going on, chose to, whatever, matured, met people, but generally it becomes because somebody was raised that way. I was talking with a professor earlier this morning that wrote Morality in the Environmental Crisis. What made him care? Why do you care so much? He's a professor. I don't know if he's tenured or not, but he's got a good gig. Doesn't need to do these extra things and care so much.
Right.
What makes him? What makes you care? What makes you so kind? And you're talking about your parents and how you're raised and raised in the community, and you were raised that way. Mm-hmm. Again, you chose to. A lot of us choose to be different than what you chose, but that beautiful upbringing, and I'm grateful to them.
Yeah.
Look who they put in our
I'm
world.
grateful. I'm grateful.
Dr.
Too.
Mike Sevilla.
Yeah.
Well, they're Mike Sevilla.
Yeah,
they don't call you Doc.
Yeah, that's right.
Hi, Doc.
they do when they're joking around.
Do they? That'd be hilarious. It'd be hilarious to be around one of the family things. But I'm grateful to them. Oh. I mean that because look at what you do, and look at what you've done with social media as a physician. Mm-hmm. You at the forefront. We touched on this before.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I started, being interested in. Well, I've always been interested in technology, but I started getting interested in the internet. I think it's been more than 10 years ago. So it was when that whole immunization thing was happening. So with vaccine. For people who don't know, that there was a bad medical study, maybe about 10 years ago plus, that sparked this whole thing about, vaccines causing autism. That study's been debunked, but that information is still around. And back at that time, medicine as an industry, physicians, doctors, they were not prepared for the bad information that was out there by celebrities. And back at that time, if you Googled, vaccines and autism, you get all these negative, inaccurate type of searches, and it took a long time for medicine and physicians just to kind of say, hey, we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to stand up for the right information out there. There's a lot of bad information out there, and there's a lot of, doctors and physicians that you'll see on TV right now, who made their career on being proactive on social media, talking about whatever, whether it's about cancer drugs or whether it's about different type of diseases, trying to bash all the negative stuff out there, which people still bring to me. They still bring to me
the internet, the good, the bad, and the ugly. From
it
the
is,
internet.
and doctors still, some of them still think it's all negative. I see it as more of an opportunity to talk to patients about, hey, this is, this is what's good, this is what's bad, this is what's biased. They bring me information and say, hey, they say that this is bad. Well, I'm like, well, who paid for this site? Who's behind it? Who's funding it? So we get to teach my patients about advocacy, teach my patients about, hey, who's really behind some of this stuff. And, I don't want to, get into politics or any of that type of stuff, but people have to know the source of the information. And what we do know is that, Americans, they trust nurses, they trust doctors, and, they have that relationship with their doctor, and they should ask them about this information that's out there.
When you, a couple of things, and by the way, and I know I don't have it next to me, but I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and I think it was about a week ago, about a new drug. Here it is. $2 million new Novartis drug is priciest ever. And they say it starts 24th of May. The world's most expensive medicine is about to hit the market. A one-time treatment for a devastating infant muscle wasting disease won approval from United States Food and Drug Administration. The Novartis says its gene therapy will cost $2,125,000 now again, and people, I don't know what I don't know what it took to develop that, but I dare say if you have an infant that has a muscle wasting disease, this is going to be a life-saving medication. Should it cost $2 million? how do I judge that? If somebody said, I can save your child's life, this is what it's going to cost. I don't know. I mean, that just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'm reading it, and when I read it, because I had the physical paper, and I thought, I'm reading this wrong. I'm reading it too fast. I'm missing something. It can't be.
Yeah.
It can't be.
Yeah. For
one person, for one.
For that type of thing, I mean, dude, there's a lot of fraud and abuse out there too. There's been articles this week about the U.S. government going after a company who were, unfortunately, paying off doctors to prescribe their medication, driving the price up and frauding Medicare, and so that type of thing really opens it up to fraud and abuse. When you unfortunately, say it's for a child, or it's for a child rare illness. What is the cost of that?
What's the value? Yeah. What did it cost to research it, to develop? And again, in fairness. In the ideal world, these things would be provided. But Novartis, again, and I'm no advocate for certainly any particular company, developed something. Again, if it's your child whose life this medication saves, can you put a price tag on it? But again, how is that supposed to work? Government picks it up. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Which means we pick it up. I mean, it's just
sure. It's
if
the
government
picks
it up. So should my taxpayers go to a medication that's gonna save a kid's life who has a rare disease? I mean, that's a huge question. What about my patients who I see every day who they can't get their blood pressure medicine, or they can't get their diabetes medicine? I mean, you probably been reading articles about the price of insulin. Which is a life-sustaining and life-saving medication. I have patients who can get that medicine. So it's just like who gets what, who pays for it. It's another huge question.
Yeah, it's one of those huge questions. Are your parents still listening? Anyway?
I don't know.
You don't know? Because what I should have done properly, and please forgive me, and I hope I'm not making sure, I should have said, Mabuhay, como está Pokeo?
There you go.
Right?
That's what I was waiting
for. And the response would be, Mabuti po naman. Right? I know a little to get myself in trouble. I'm probably blushing. But... right. But again, I want to get back to the issue with your parents.
Sure.
A little bit, because again, raising a child, it's interesting, because I ask so often, where does manners come from? I'll ask young people, every once in a while, I'm the old guy, I'm walking towards the door, and some young guy will, go ahead, sir. And it's like, and I know what it means. It's like, go ahead, old man. But I'll stop. I'll say, wow, where'd you learn your manners? Where did they come from? And generally, I hear either my parents, my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my grandfather, from someone. They don't say I learned them from social media. Somebody raised them.
Oh,
and again, speaks to you. I know I'm going back.
As I get older, and as we're all getting older, my parents are getting older. They continue to inspire me every day. It just they came over to the United States. It was just them, none of their other family members. They didn't have any other family over here, but they had a community of Filipinos who, they had something in common. If I go, across the state of Ohio, I get all lost. I don't even know where I'm at. They just come to a whole different country that I've never been to before. The only thing they have in common is with these other people from the same country, and they start a family, they have a career, they have kids, wow, I don't even know if I could do that now. It's like me going to the Philippines and meeting some Americans there, and moving and doing a life there. I mean, it's just like
it's incredible.
It's incredible. As I think about it every day, what they did. I mean, it's so that goes along. To your point, is just like you're in a whole different place, a whole different country. I mean, you don't have anybody looking over your shoulder like family, like seeing, how you're raising your kids and all that kind of stuff. I mean, who knows what would have happened, And obviously I'm very fortunate. I mean, I knew a lot of my peers in my peer group, some of them didn't end up as well. You know, they made bad choices. They ended up at the wrong crowd, and and I thank my lucky stars every day. You know, about my upbringing and my parents and being in the community here in Youngstown. So yeah, it's a great life, Louie.
And you
very,
think
very
about
lucky.
You think about that, Dr. Sevilla, with people again coming to, they know somebody, they find some of their, I'm going to do air quotes, someone's going to see their people, someone they can relate to, understands the culture, whatever, and some that just went, it's interesting. Again, your parents still alive, still vibrant. There are questions that I would have, and I'm 66. My dad died when I was 39. So the questions I would have for him as I got older that I'll never be, there's nobody to answer them.
Right.
That, again, not to encourage you to ask all the questions, but you can't anticipate what you will, but to be thoughtful. I think everyone should be thoughtful and ask the people, tell the people in your life that you love them, and ask the questions, especially, family and parents that, nobody to answer. And I think about my grandfather that came here, and how did he end up? My grandfather was in Omaha, Nebraska. Mm-hmm. How does a Russian Jew from the pogroms end up in basically everything taken from them years? How did you get? I would New York, okay, maybe even Ohio. I know how my dad, but
yeah.
Omaha, Nebraska?
Yeah.
I remember when my father, I don't want to get into a long story, but because of all the things going on about World War II, my father was in World War II, a soldier, and there was a guy, a friend of his that he was stationed with, that was from Youngstown. Mm-hmm. And back then, people were very, I didn't want to say, people married people of their own kind, if you will.
Heritage.
And he said, ethnicity.
Yeah.
And he told my dad, he said, I know a nice Jewish girl from Youngstown, Ohio. And they started to correspond when he was, and that's how, because my dad used to say when people would say to him, I didn't know there were Jews. And again, this is years ago. I didn't know there were Jews in Omaha, Nebraska. And he would say, they're not. I moved here, as if he was the only one, which isn't the case. But you think about how people got around. How did they get there? People need to ask those questions. Again, it's one I'll never know.
Oh, yeah.
How do you get to Omaha?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my parents tell about the story about, how they came over to Youngstown. I mean, they were never on a plane. Their first plane was to, Youngstown, Ohio. And that whole experience, and just like, man,
it's wonderful that you know that, though.
Put that in perspective, and I don't think my wife would mind if I mentioned this, but I mean, her father passed in the past couple of months, how
old? About,
I think 80, 81, something like that. Yeah. So that has put some things in perspective for me, because, when I deal with patients and families in my business and in my practice, death and life is part of that. But once that starts to hit closer to home, you start to think about life. You start to think about things. You start to think about the relationships with your family, and the me as 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, it's like, it's really, and people have said this, people say this all the time, don't sweat the small stuff, but as things really start to hit you, as far as you have loved ones or people who are close to, or friends who are starting to pass away, be like, hey, that's, what about the people who are left? What are the people who are living? What are people who are here? Is that time to spend more time with them, or to, not let things bother you as much as you did 10 or 15
like you say, the
20 years ago.
The little things that, the inconsequential, that things that when you look back, I guess are inconsequential. Maybe at the time they're not. When you say that about death, we can, again, I know it sounds trite to say, I'm sorry about your wife losing your dad. And one of the things that I learned quickly, and I say it a lot, not self-serving, but when I remember, again, my dad, tumultuous relationship, learned a lot, loved him, missed him. He was not a good dad. He was too angry, too violent, nonetheless, the reality is when I remember I was driving home, and it was a few weeks after he had died. And I started tearing up. I don't know what, I don't remember what I was thinking about, but I remember tears coming. I was thinking about it. And I thought, what's the matter with me? It's been a few weeks already. And then it hit me, Dr. Sevilla, I thought, you know what, for better or for worse, 39 years that man was in my life, all my life.
Oh, yeah.
And how possibly could I be done with the feelings, or how they've changed in just a few weeks? People will always say, time makes it easier. It doesn't make it easier. It makes it different. Nothing makes losing somebody that you love easier.
Right.
It makes it different.
Yeah.
And we need to let people feel at their. We sometimes I think some humans want to rush. You're okay. You'll be.
Exactly.
For self-serving, not for that person.
Right.
Just be present. Let them be.
Exactly.
When you mentioned about your father-in-law, last year I did a number of interviews with people that talked about end of life. Dr. Jessica Zitter from California did a great Netflix Extreme Measures, I believe it was called, wrote a book. Dr. Catherine Mannix from the UK about death. We don't talk about it enough. And when I had Dr. Mannix on, I remember very briefly, she was scheduled to come on. She was actually in the United States because a friend of hers father was dying, needed to reschedule. And when I was on the phone with her, I said, how wonderful it was that she went to be there while her friend's father was passing. She said, Louie, he died. We need to be able to say, died.
Sure.
I did so many interviews like that. People thought I was like suicidal or something. You keep talking about death. We don't. We don't. And it is obvious. What do I want to say? The ultimate reality?
It is. And I can tell you, people are getting a little bit better with that now. There's been a lot of, I think, things in the news and things on television, about words like hospice and words like end of life.
End of life, yeah.
And again, I don't think my wife would want to share this, but before that, I think about a year or two before that, her grandmother passed away, and she, was involved with hospice early on.
Wow.
Early on. And it was a whole process, and it made me, it educated me professionally as far as, how can I approach this with my own patients? How can I approach, as you know, Louie, words mean everything. So so how do you approach the topic using the right words, using the right tone? You don't want to sound like you're trying to, kill off one of my patients or their family members, but you want to honor that person and say, hey, what do you want us to do or not do as we get closer to the end? Because, my job as your doctor is to make sure that I want to do what you want to do or not want to do. And we have to talk about that now. And, with the legal system, there are some documents and things, advanced directives and that type of thing to help the person kind of navigate through that. So it's not so rushed, so it's not so awkward. And when her grandmother went through that process, she had all of her legal documents all set up beforehand, so they could just focus and just be with her, and focus on her, and not have to worry about all this legal stuff or stuff at the end. So it was a I wouldn't say a beautiful process, but it was a less dramatic process from an external world, from the financial world, from a legal standpoint, just to stay there, just to have the ability just to be there with her at the end.
And I love how you said that, Dr. Sevilla. When you say that, you learn by hearing a story like yours, or in my case, my dad had a horrible death. My parents still at 39 years old were keeping things and trying to minimize. I don't know. We don't want to upset. My dad's dying. I mean, and he did good and bad. They both died from leukemia. And towards the end, when his last hospitalization, I started to see things. And started asking my mom, oh, no, in denial, whether she was in denial, whatever, to protect me, again, air quotes. But it was a horrible death. because I have to say their failure to deal with it in advance and have a discussion. If I can say benefit, I assured my mom she wouldn't die that way, and I was able to be more proactive. Relationships with her physicians, talking about and being more open, her being more open about it, and that again should never be the case.
Right.
If you again learn, you're going to learn hard or easy. I guess I should say you're going to learn it the hard way or the easy way, and you learn it by hearing about your grandmother, hearing my story, whatever. People need to make those plans, arrangements, get that stuff out of the way, because there's no time to do it. You can't focus on it, so it just kind of sits ominously out there.
Yeah,
correct.
And I talk to my patients about that all the time. They're like, "Oh, there's always going to be time, and there's always going to be a time. I want things done a certain way, and I don't have time to do this now because I have to do this A, B, C, and D, and as you know, and as everybody knows, as people get older, time goes faster,
forgive me, the way life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the quicker it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what someone said to me.
And you're right. It is still awkward for a lot of people, but I think in general, I think there are doors being opened earlier
and more information
in life to help have those hard conversations.
I'm talking with Dr. Mike Sevilla. Doc, one of the things that when you think about having those conversations, and I just said this, I had Joe Lane on yesterday that does EMS and life trans and funeral homes, and you and I were talking, and I said that he talked about people coming to the funeral unprepared. As when my dad died, my mom was certainly unable to go make the plans.
Decisions.
We buried very quickly, supposed to be by sundown the next day, so I went with no information. But the reality is when the night after my father died, my mom said to my wife, Sammy and I never thought we would die. And of course she didn't mean that they thought they were immortal. They never had the discussion. That we came to learn that down the road. Never talked about it. It's a hard conversation. I know when my wife and I have talked about it, it's not somebody, let's talk about what do you want me to do when you die or you die?
Exactly.
I get that, but it's vitally important because that's the time to do it, is when you're relatively healthy, correct?
Correct. Yeah, because you can think in your mind, you can plan it out, you have a clear mind.
Not under pressure.
There's no drama at all or anything like that. And, and those are the times where you should, probably, talk to an attorney or talk to, people about the legal documents that go along with some of those decisions. And then, sign them off, or if you're going to get other family members involved, get their signature as well, and then get those documents and then just put them somewhere. Don't worry about it, and then
let family know where they're at.
Yeah.
So that
let family know where they're at, and have a plan, and if something, planned happens or if something unplanned happens, then you kind of know where all that stuff is, or what the decisions are,
the wishes,
it could be any number of things. Do I want a feeding tube? Do I not want a feeding tube? Do I want antibiotics? Do I want to be on a breathing machine? Do I want my heart, restarted after it stops? All those decisions are better when your mental faculties are clear and you can communicate that to the whole family, so everybody's on the same page. And as a physician, unfortunately, I see the other side of that, where there are a dozen people and there's that one person who either doesn't want to let go, or who was out of town and that they're having guilt that they haven't been a part of the family. They're like, we still want to do everything, but Uncle Joe told us he didn't want anything, but there's no documentation of it. Yeah. It causes more stress and strife in the family, and that makes things harder for everybody.
So again, that's a really important message. You've been a physician for how long now?
Let's see, maybe 20 years. Coming on 20 years. Yeah.
Wow. Must be older than I thought.
We'll talk off the air on that.
Yeah. But when you and again, I'm a reference when you have to give bad information. Again, I love your never been a patient, but your bedside manner's got to. You have such a wonderful personality. You're so warm. You're so loving, and I love that about you. Again, I've said this many times on the show. If I had to choose, if you had to choose good bedside manner or good medical, obviously you want the. Just tell me, doc. Just tell me what's the bottom line. I get that, but to be able to have that blend of it, which is you, is wonderful.
Sure.
Because you are so kind, feel so deeply, it's got to be difficult for giving someone bad news, or should I say not good news. And very quickly, I'm going to reference, I had a guy that wrote a book last year. He was on I believe a surgical oncologist, and he said after 25 years it doesn't get any easier when you think things are going to be okay and you open somebody up and you have to go back and say, you know what, my words, not his, that it's not the way. Delivering news, finding someone's got blood work that came, whatever, you're the expert, you're the doctor, that isn't what you had hoped or they had hoped. Feeling as deeply as you do, what's that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's there's all, and we go to classes on how to deliver that type of stuff. People don't know I'm a family doctor, and I work at the Family Practice Center of Salem. And in our training, we're one of the things I love about my job is that I do develop these relationships with my patients, with my families, with my community. So as time goes on, I get to know them a little bit. I get to know their families a little bit. So when that bad news comes on, I kind of know how to deliver that information because I've gotten to know them over the years. I kind of know what, some people just want the facts. You're just like, this is the facts, and then move on. Some people need it delivered a little bit more gently, and I treat my job, I guess, like how I treat life, just the whole golden rule thing, like how would I want bad information to be delivered? And I always try to put myself in the seat or in the place of my patient and say, how would I want to hear this? And each person is different. And I've got to develop that relationship through a number of years with a lot of my patients, and I know how they want to hear things. And I know that how I know I'm not going to beat around the bush with some people. Some people I have to drag it out a little bit just to kind of set things up so I don't really shock them. So, but just from my standpoint, any type of bad information or negative information, it could be as simple as, I'm sorry your kid has strep throat. that's a relatively simple thing, or it's like, you have cancer and this is the next step that we have to do. So it just, for me, Louie, I just try to think of myself as that patient. How would I want to hear that information? And that's how I try to deliver it. Sometimes I hit the mark and sometimes I miss the mark, but I mean,
but I know you always do it, like you say, with the golden rule and compassion.
Yeah.
How it's received could be rejected or whatever, but nonetheless, I know you do it with an open heart. Dina Mallory Sears said, I went all through grade school and high school with Dr. Sevilla.
Dina.
He was always a wonderful person. So glad to see how you help people. Isn't that beautiful? Man. I mean, to hear that, it's always been you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's
you,
so
Dina.
nice. Thank you, Dina. Yeah. I mean, it's just growing up. Growing up in the area here, and I know I just saw on the news one of the longtime teachers over at Mooney is going to retired. And I remember being in her class. I can't remember her name, unfortunately. I guess she was teaching for 40 or 50 years or something like that.
Forever,
and it's just like, all these great people in the community, that you've gotten to know through the years, and it's see again, technology, Louie. People just reaching out and say, hey.
Again, remembering the teachers, remember the ones that had a positive impact or negative, but mostly positive impact on you.
Right. That's just part of this great community that we have here. It's just I've had a lot of unfortunately, a lot of people moved away for whatever reason. They moved away for family, for jobs, or whatever. And there's a handful of us left here, or people who come back for holidays or reunions or that type of thing. And it's a great community to grow up in and stay in. And my wife, my wife is up from the Warren area, so she's up from Trumbull County up there. So all of our families is here locally, and and it was important for us when we finished college and we finished our professional training to come back and to be close to our communities, to be close to our families.
That's beautiful.
To continue here. So,
and we're better for it. For you in the community.
Well, and we're better for it too, just for meeting all these new people and meeting the people who come in from outside of Youngstown to add to our community. It's a great thing.
I've got to ask you, I know at the top of the hour you're listening to Louie B Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. Going a couple extra minutes with Dr. Sevilla, okay?
No, I'm good, sir. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a couple of things. Someone wants to know, you take new patients, correct?
Only if they're nice people.
I didn't know where
if you're a mean person out there, I'm not taking new patients.
I didn't, but you.
Yeah. Yes. Salem Family. Thank you so much. Yeah. Salem Family Practice. 330-332-9961 is our phone number.
Give that again.
330-332-9961. For people who are on Facebook, you can follow me on Facebook, Salem Family Practice, Dr. Mike Sevilla. That gets our information there.
And I've got those links up at louisfreeshow.com and Vindy.com.
Yeah, drmikesevilla.com. So we're always taking new patients. Yeah, come on down to Salem.
To be able to find obviously bright, you want well-educated, but to add that compassion, and I love that about you. You were mentioning, did you still want to talk about the rabbits at all?
Yeah, Louie.
Or are you just teasing me?
No,
okay,
no,
I have
no.
rabbit ears. You want rabbit ears?
What's that?
Want the rabbit ears?
Yeah. So if people aren't already following Louie on Facebook, so I'm learning about either one. So it's Rabbit Awareness Week. I know in the UK, but I'm just reading a little bit about Rabbit Awareness Week. It's this week, right, Louie?
This week, yes. Rabbit Awareness Week. I have other ones. You want different? You want the pink ones?
How about that?
How about the white ones?
Somebody screenshot this on Facebook.
You know what? Yeah, can you screenshot from Facebook?
I
would take a picture of you with those and send it to Rabbit Awareness people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got to.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do it later.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to say
no. Well, I mean, so, and Louie, you probably, and people on Facebook, you can kind of see that. So I guess it's in the UK. So it's raising awareness about rabbits, and then there's this rabbit illness that causes internal bleeding in rabbits, and they can prevent it with vaccination of the rabbits in the UK, which kind of go back to our vaccination conversation from before. So it's great that you're raising awareness about it. I didn't know about it.
Well, again, and it's here. They've found it with some rabbits here. It's coming. And I wish we were more proactive, because my understanding is it's illegal to import the vaccine from the UK. They're very proactive in the UK about it. Everybody knows I'm a rabbit man. I'm a rabbit lover and animal lover. And when I reached out to a vet, a wonderful, incredible rabbit vet on the west side of Cleveland, and there's nothing at this point. We really need to urge people to be able to get this vaccine. It's going to save the rabbits' lives, and again, to be able to do something. Dr. Allen was in earlier in the week. To be able to vaccinate your pets against certain things like the heartworm, and I mean, why wouldn't you?
Well, let me ask you. Kind of as a media person, as a non-medical person. I mean, I presume you get feedback and about vaccinations, pro and anti, and like how do you deal with that feedback?
I have to tell you honestly, and I hope you don't mind, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I understand sometimes why people are, when you hear certain people talk about certain reactions, and what do? Do you roll the dice? I mean, I don't know. It's easier to say with a pet. It's people are frightened, and that's why people like you, the value of how you do to talk about it. Again, I have to tell you, I've had an MIT scientist on since you asked, if you don't mind. I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
Be honest, I'm going to be honest with you. MIT scientist on, Dr. Stephanie Seneff, who believes actually that there could be something that kicks off the autism that's actually related to the glyphosate, the Monsanto and now Bayer's Roundup. That there's so much in the environment, so many of these chemicals in the environment, and some of the problems, because it's undeniable about the rates of autism rising, correct?
Right. It is. It is.
And Alzheimer's. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we don't know. We don't know why there's an increase. There's been a lot of theories. Immunizations is one of the theories, which I think is inaccurate, but we just don't know why. And there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions. On why the autism rate and Alzheimer's is going up.
And so, the Alzheimer's, very quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We'll just keep you a couple more minutes.
Sure,
By the way,
yeah.
Dina says, I'm a nurse and I specialize in geriatric along with hospice care. Dina, I don't know if you're in touch with her.
No, I mean, not for many years.
I would love to have her on to talk about hospice care and geriatric care. I had a Dr. Marwan Saw, who is at the Lou Ruvo Brain Center in Las Vegas. It's actually Cleveland Clinic, and he's an author. He's been on with me a number of times. He specializes in Alzheimer's and dementia. He said, Louie, send me an email. I'm taking a job with the Cleveland Clinic. And I'm like, oh, bro, we're going to be able to hang out. You're going to be... It's in Las Vegas. Who knew? I didn't know that Cleveland Clinic had a brain center in Las Vegas.
I had no idea.
That being said, he recently co-authored a book with a Jamie Tyrone who had genetic testing. Again, if you can just give me a couple more minutes, where she has off the top of my head, like a 92% chance, I guess, because of certain genetics with Alzheimer's, not the only issue with Alzheimer's, of developing Alzheimer's. Frightening, horrifying, genetic testing. If you can talk a little bit about what your thoughts are. I'm sure I'm guessing you're getting people that are coming in saying, you know what, I had I did some genetic, I did the ancestry. What is it, 24, whatever.
Yeah,
and they come in.
and all that stuff, yeah.
And one of the issues in the book was, should you get that kind of testing?
Yeah.
And one more minute with me. Again, leukemia on both sides of the family, going back at least 2 generations. And my wife and she had read something about a test. Would I have the test? And here's the way I look at it at this point. If there was a test for leukemia, am I genetically predisposed to it? How would it change my life? Well, if there was something I could do, if I could be proactive, it was like, okay, don't do this, eat this, and you won't. That's different. But if it's like the flip side is, every bruise that didn't heal quickly or whatever, it'd be like, oh my God, here it is, here it is. Right. What are your thoughts on some of the...
I get a lot of questions about this genetic testing and Ancestry and 23andMe and all that kind of stuff. So...
Did I say 24andMe? 23andMe, I'm sorry, 23.
No, I mean, that's close enough. I mean, there's very few genetic type of things that we know are 100% you're going to get this. Now, a lot of the stuff is a what if, and that's where the problem is it, is it going to cause a problem? Is it not going to cause a problem? But we do know that once you give that information away, you can't take it back. It's out there, it's out there. It's probably going to be shared. It's kind of like Google information, it's going to be out there. Who's going to get that information? We don't know, Are people like health insurance companies going to get that information? Is that going to impact your health insurance where it's going out, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yes.
We just don't know any of that information. Is that going to affect, crazy type of things? Is that going to affect kids getting into college? Be like, oh, you're only supposed to live until you're 22, so we're not going to accept you into college or something like that. We don't know the unintended consequences of getting your genetic information out there. That's why I don't do it, because I don't know what it's really going to mean down the road, and nobody knows what it's really going to mean. But we do know that once it's out there, once people, put your DNA on a website
Yeah.
or in a some kind of bank out there, who has access to it? What can they do with that information? What's it going to mean for all of us? Nobody knows any of that. I mean, people think it's a fun thing and be like, oh, we're 13th cousins or something like that. But once you get that information out there, you can't take it back.
Yeah.
And nobody knows how it's really going to affect you down the road.
And I dare say, and not just to be funny, do you really want that cousin knocking on your door? Most of us know someone in your family that you wouldn't want knocking on the door. I mean, do you really want to put that out there for that other?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
Except if it's for a specific type of thing. There are, very few genetic diseases that we know are going to be an issue. Things like certain types of breast cancer, not all breast cancer, certain types of colon cancer, not all colon cancer. So for those specific type of questions, yes, but not just for
for fun.
Right.
And again, for someone that may have where to know, at least again, the importance of knowing your family medical history.
Right, exactly.
To know that is there colon cancer, because you're supposed to start with to have the exams when you're 50, right? To have the
I mean, normally, 50 or 55, but if they were diagnosed in their 40s, usually at that age, or even 5 or 10 years before they were diagnosed. So it depends what type of cancer it is, how aggressive it was.
Like mammogram. If breast cancer is in the family, you may need to start earlier.
Certain types of cancers you have to screen earlier than the general population, and that's
important.
That's good to know for your family history. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I'm so thrilled that you're here. I hope I didn't keep you too long. I just love you, bro.
Yeah,
and I'm grateful.
It's great to be back. I wish I can come back more. I got to clear more time on my schedule to come back.
Please.
It's always great. I mean,
goes too fast.
And just so people know, I mean, I don't come in here with a script. We're just like talking. We're just like,
and I love that.
That's what I love about this.
I got to get those ears in. Make sure the ears are clear in the video. I love that about you. You come in just to help give information and to have the conversation.
Sure. Looking forward to coming back soon, Louie.
Please. Thank you so much. And thank you to your parents, too.
Alrighty.
I'll be back with some closing words right after.